My wife's sister's new rich boyfriend mocked me at dinner. Everyone laughed. My wife told me to stop making the family look bad, so I let them talk until he mentioned his job. Then I pulled out my phone and watched their smiles fade. My name's Aaron, 32, married, and still somehow treated like the unpaid intern of my wife's family. You'd think marriage would come with some level of adult respect, like maybe a seat at the big table of opinions. But no. In the world of the Hollis family, I'm basically the tech support who married up. The guy you hand your phone to when the Wi-Fi stops working and then mock for not wearing loafers to brunch. My wife Sophie comes from a clan that makes family values look like a competitive sport. They're the type who wear matching holiday sweaters unironically and have a group chat named #blessed complete with sparkle emojis and passive-aggressive gifs about gratitude. Every Sunday dinner feels like an audition for the Real Housewives of Pretentious County. Her mom, Diana, is the ringleader. Picture a woman who could weaponize a casserole. She hosts dinner parties like she's getting Michelin stars for her roast chicken. She doesn't just set the table, she curates it. There are napkin rings shaped like swans, wine labels that match her outfit, and an expression that says, "I can smell lower income." She'll smile while offering you pie, but if you look close enough, you can see the disappointment frosting on top. Then there's Frank, the dad, retired financial consultant, golf enthusiast, walking khaki commercial. Every conversation somehow leads back to his time on the green. Golf teaches patience, discipline, and integrity, he'll say like he's quoting scripture. Meanwhile, I'm just trying not to fall asleep before dessert. He doesn't dislike me. He just doesn't understand how I make money typing on a computer. I once told him I write code that runs an entire logistics system. He said, "Oh, like Excel?" And then patted me on the shoulder like I'd said I finger paint for a living. And then there's Chloe, the younger sister, 26, going on TikTok. Chloe is the golden child. She changes her career path every fiscal quarter and somehow always lands on her feet. One month she's a wellness coach, the next she's brand consulting for influencers. Translation: she makes canvas slides for people selling scented candles online. But the family treats her like she's curing cancer between yoga sessions. Every year comes with a new boyfriend, too. Each one more insufferable than the last. Now me, I'm the quiet guy in the corner. The humble husband who keeps to himself. I work from home building back-end systems and automating processes for actual companies that pay real money. But because I don't post daily rise and grind quotes on LinkedIn or brag about networking over mimosas, they assume I'm unemployed. Last Christmas, Frank literally asked if I'd considered applying somewhere stable. I said, like a nursing home? He didn't laugh. The thing about Sophie's family is they confuse volume with virtue. Whoever talks the loudest at dinner apparently wins. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there eating green beans, wondering if any of them have ever experienced silence that wasn't due to buffering. Sophie, my wife, is beautiful, intelligent, and unfortunately fluent in her family's language appearances. She grew up in that environment, so she doesn't always see it. To her, Sunday dinners are family bonding. To me, they're unpaid therapy sessions with better lighting. I remember the first dinner after we got engaged. Diana toasted to family expansion like she was merging companies. She gave Sophie a diamond bracelet and handed me a framed photo of the family from 2004. No joke, no welcome, no we're glad you're here. Just here's what you're marrying into. Don't mess it up. They see Sophie as their crown jewel, and I'm the guy who somehow snuck past security. Diana once introduced me to her friend at a charity auction by saying, "This is Aaron. He's in computers." Like I was a middle schooler doing a science fair project. The woman smiled, patted my arm, and said, "Good for you, dear. Good for me." Like I just learned to tie my shoes. At these dinners, everyone performs. It's not about eating. It's about being seen eating. Chloe talks about her career moves in that influencer voice. Frank talks about golf and the market. Diana talks about how everything runs better when she's in charge. And Sophie plays mediator, laughing at everyone's jokes like she's the human version of a mood stabilizer. Me? I smile, sip wine, and mentally code an app that could auto-generate small talk. Work been good, Aaron? Frank asks every time as if one day I'll say, nope. Got fired again for being too humble. Yeah, busy as ever, I'll reply. He nods. That's good. You know, there's something to be said for consistency. I've been with my firm 25 years before retirement. Yeah, I've been with JavaScript 15 years, I say. He blinks. Is that a company? No, Frank. It's a lifestyle. And then Diana jumps in. Sophie says you work from home. That must be so nice getting to, take breaks whenever you want. Sure, I say. Between the 6-hour coding sessions and client calls that start at 2 a.m. London time, I get tons of free time. She tilts her head, smiles that tight, I don't believe you smile. Well, at least you get to be around Sophie more. Yeah, I say. That's the dream. Watching her work emails instead of watching sunsets. The first time I tried being honest, really honest, at one of these dinners, it went nuclear. Diana had asked if I thought Chloe's new skincare line idea was viable. I said, if her business plan involves selfies and affirmations, sure. You'd think I'd cursed in church. Sophie kicked me under the table so hard my shin bruised. Now I play the quiet game because in that family, speaking truth is like lighting a candle in a gas leak. You might make the room prettier for 2 seconds before it explodes. Last Thanksgiving, I sat between Frank and Diana. Not the best seat, but Sophie said it had balanced the energy. I think she meant isolate the sarcasm. Frank spent half the meal explaining to me how golf reflects life. It's about strategy, Aaron, he said, carving turkey like it owed him money. You can't just hit the ball and hope. It's all about planning your swing. Totally, I replied. Just like marriage, you plan your swing and hope you don't end up in the rough. He didn't get it. Sophie elbowed me again. Across the table, Chloe was filming her plate off her Instagram. Grateful for family and abundance, she said while Diana corrected her angle because the mashed potatoes looked flat. Frank was complaining that someone moved his putter last weekend. Sophie kept checking her phone under the table, probably texting me, smile more. And me? I was just praying for dessert or divine intervention. At one point, Diana turned to me and said, you know, Aaron, you're such a quiet presence in this family. I smiled. That's my strategy. It makes people miss me faster. She blinked. Oh, how interesting. Yeah, I said. It's like fasting, but for conversation. After dinner, everyone migrated to the living room for family reflection. That's their term for post-meal gossip hour. I sat on the couch while Chloe showed off her latest boyfriend's yacht pictures. Diana bragged about hosting next month's charity gala. And Frank started a PowerPoint-level monologue about inflation. I zoned out halfway through thinking about my latest project. I was developing a predictive algorithm for retail inventory management, something big firms were already sniffing around to license. But in that house, mentioning tech is like admitting you believe in witchcraft. So when Diana asked, "What are you working on these days, Aaron?" I paused, then said, "Just a little thing called staying sane." She laughed politely. "You're so witty," she said, which is rich considering she once called sarcasm a poor man's humor. Sophie, bless her, tries to bridge the gap. She'll squeeze my hand under the table, whisper, "Just smile," and later tell me, "You know they mean well." I always want to ask, do they? Or do they just mean control? But marriage, as I've learned, is part diplomacy, part survival. So, I play along. I show up to their dinners, bring decent wine, compliment Diana's cooking. Is this rosemary or vengeance? I taste, and nod while Frank redefines the stock market as a morality play. I even helped Chloe with her website once. Set it up, hosted it, made it look professional. She thanked me publicly on Instagram with the caption, "Shout out to my brother-in-law for doing tech things." Tech things. I spent 16 hours coding her e-commerce platform, but sure, tech things. At the end of the day, I know who I am. I don't need validation from the family of perfects. I'm not flashy. I'm not loud. And I don't measure worth by square footage or followers. But I also know one thing. They underestimate me constantly. And that's the beautiful part about being invisible in a family obsessed with appearances. Because people who overlook you, they never see you coming. And I have a feeling sooner or later they're going to find out exactly how wrong they've been about the quiet tech guy. For now though, I just pour another drink, smile through another round of small talk, and think, if perfection had a zip code, this house would be under federal surveillance. The thing about Sophie's family is they treat new boyfriends like seasonal decorations. Every few months, someone new gets placed at the dinner table, polished, admired, and then quietly replaced after a conscious uncoupling post on Instagram. So, when Chloe announced she was bringing someone new to dinner, I didn't even blink. I just asked, "What's his name and how long until he needs therapy?" Sophie didn't appreciate the sarcasm. "Can you please be nice this time, Aaron?" she said, brushing her hair in the bathroom mirror like we were going to meet the Pope. "Nice. I'm always nice," I said, pulling on a clean shirt. "I'm practically the Dalai Lama with Wi-Fi." She gave me that look, the one that says you're about to ruin my family's image again. You know what I mean? Last time you asked Chloe's boyfriend if he had an actual job or just an Etsy page. To be fair, yeah, I said his business was literally called Manifest Money. I thought it was satire. This one's different. She said, slipping on her earrings. He's in finance. Of course he is, I muttered. A Chloe classic. Nothing says stability like a guy who says liquidity 3 times before dessert. When I heard his name, Brandon, I could already picture him. There's a certain kind of confidence that comes with a name like Brandon. You can't be humble with it. Every Brandon I've ever met smells like cologne and entitlement. They're the type who think reading Rich Dad Poor Dad counts as an MBA. We pulled up to Diana's house at 6:04 p.m. sharp. Any later and she'd act like we'd committed war crimes. Sure enough, she opened the door wearing pearls and a frown. "You're late." "4 minutes." Said, "Yeah," she replied. "That's late." Inside, the house smelled like money and self-righteousness. The dining room sparkled with more crystal than a Vegas gift shop. And there he was, Brandon, the man in the myth, the inevitable disappointment. He stood up to greet us, tanned like he lived on a yacht. Hair slicked so tight it looked waterproof. His suit was navy blue and probably screamed tailored in Milan if you listened closely enough. When he smiled, I swear I heard a stock market bell ring. "Aaron, my man," he said, reaching out for a handshake that could have been used in hostage negotiations. "I've heard so much about you." "None of it true, I hope," I said, gripping his hand just enough to remind him. "I'm not made of tofu." He laughed. Loud, performative, the kind that demands attention. "Sophie tells me you're a tech guy. Love that. Gotta love innovation, man. I'm in finance myself. Hedge fund stuff, portfolio optimization, all that jazz." "Ah, yes, finance jazz. The favorite song of every man who thinks Excel is an art form." Diana beamed. "Isn't that wonderful? Finally, someone who understands business." "Yeah," I said finally. Sophie gave me the warning tap under the table, the marital Morse code for behave. I smiled, the kind of smile that makes dentists rich. Chloe appeared behind him, glowing like a light bulb that runs on validation. "Isn't he amazing?" she said, looping her arm through his. "He's working on this big project with international investors." "Sounds stressful," I said. "International investors are tough. I mean, imagine having to Google every currency symbol." He laughed again, missing the sarcasm by a mile. "You're funny, man. We need guys like you in finance. Keeps the energy light." "Oh, buddy. You wouldn't survive one Slack thread with me." Dinner started. Same old family choreography. Diana asking about everyone's lives like an FBI agent. Frank blessing the food as if it were a quarterly report. And Chloe performing her relationship like it came with sponsorship deals. "So, Brandon," Frank said, cutting into his steak. "Tell us about this hedge fund of yours." Brandon leaned back, all confidence and buzzwords. "Well, we specialize in diversified asset management, leveraging predictive analytics to optimize cross-sectoral liquidity exposure." Even Frank paused mid-chew. "So, stocks?" Brandon grinned. "Stocks, crypto, futures, private equity, we do it all. We're disrupting traditional models." There it was. Disrupting. The word every fake entrepreneur uses when they can't explain what they actually do. "That's impressive," Diana said, her eyes glittering like she just saw her daughter marry a Fortune 500 CEO. "Thank you, ma'am," he said. "We're expanding aggressively. It's all about mindset. You have to believe in your success." Sophie mouthed at me. "Don't." But I did. "So, Brandon," I said, "when you say believe in your success, is that before or after paying taxes?" The table chuckled nervously. Brandon didn't. "Ha, funny, but I pay plenty of taxes, man. Comes with making real money." Diana's smile twitched. "Aaron, be polite." "I am," I said. "I'm just trying to understand. Finance confuses me. 1 minute you're diversified, next minute you're arrested." Even Frank smirked at that, but Sophie's foot found my shin again. Brandon, to his credit, tried to recover. "Nah, we're legit. I've got clients from all over. Even worked with a few big tech startups. Maybe we'll collaborate someday." "Maybe," I said, sipping my wine. "But you should know I charge in actual currency, not vibes." He blinked. Chloe rushed in to rescue him. Anyway, we met at a leadership conference. He was giving a talk about wealth psychology. "Wow," I said. "A talk about money from someone who has it. Groundbreaking." Diana changed the topic faster than a PR firm on scandal day. "Aaron, how's your work going?" "Oh, fine," I said. "Just finished integrating a cloud-based logistics system for a retail chain. Brandon nodded like he understood a single word. That's cool. So, you're like an IT guy? I smiled. Sure. And you're like a banker, technically investor, technically okay. He kept going. You know, man, you should really consider pivoting into finance. You've got a good head on your shoulders. Tech is great and all, but finance, that's where the real money's at. I'm doing fine, I said. He waved his fork. I mean, sure, but there's fine, and then there's thriving. Men like us should always be pushing for more. You can't settle. Totally, I said. That's why I married Sophie instead of her sister. The table went silent for a beat. Then Frank coughed into his napkin, pretending it was allergies. Brandon chuckled nervously. You've got jokes, huh? I'm a software engineer, Brandon. Debugging people is part of my skill set. He didn't laugh this time. He just smirked. The kind of smirk that says he thinks he's winning. You know, tech's fine for now, but real power is in finance. That's where decisions get made. Good to know, I said. When I build the software that replaces your job, I'll remember to be gentle. Sophie's hand clamped down on my thigh like a seat belt in turbulence. Diana cleared her throat. Desert anyone. Please, Sophie said probably as a prayer. As Diana went to fetch the pie, Brandon leaned toward me. I like you, Aaron. You remind me of my interns. Thanks, I said. You remind me of pop-up ads. He laughed again, thinking we were bonding. Man, you've got spirit. You do great under me. Yeah, I said. That's not happening. When dessert hit the table, Brandon launched into another monologue about discipline and mental frameworks for success. He even quoted Elon Musk twice. I considered faking a seizure about just to end it. Then came the punchline. He started a story about a guy who tried to make it in tech. Dude built some software, he said, waving his fork like a preacher. Made $5 and thought he was the next Zuckerberg. That's the problem with tech guys. They live in fantasy land. You can't code your way to financial literacy. Everyone laughed. Everyone but me. Sophie's laugh came out forced, like she was trying to sound lighthearted. Even Diana chuckled. Frank shook his head like it was wisdom. Brandon looked right at me. You ever try something like that, Aaron? You seem like a tech guy. I smiled polite and deadly. Once made $7, inflation, you know. Frank gave a pity chuckle. Diana forced a smile. Sophie shot me her please behave face. Brandon smirked. Well, hey, at least you've got a fallback. I know a guy who teaches coding to high schoolers. Maybe he can get you in. The table erupted in laughter again. I laughed too, quietly, slowly because what they didn't know was that I'd just signed a 6-figure contract with a global firm that his company was trying to impress. Sometimes silence isn't surrender, it's strategy. I raised my glass to thriving, I said. Brandon clinkied his glass with mine, grinning like a man who didn't realize he just walked into his own punchline. And as everyone returned to talking about success and image, I sat back, sipped my wine, and thought, same old story. Another boyfriend, another performance. But this time, I wasn't just the quiet one in the corner. I was the guy holding the secret ending. There are 3 kinds of text messages in life. The good, the bad, and the ones that ruin your weekend before you even finish your coffee. My mother-in-law's messages always fall in the 3rd category. So, when my phone buzzed at 9 a.m. that Friday with dinner Sunday, 6 p.m. now dress nice, no emoji, no greeting, just an order, it felt less like an invitation and more like a court summons. I showed Sophie the message across the kitchen table. She was sipping her oat milk latte like it contained moral superiority. Maybe we should skip it, I said. We went last month. I'm pretty sure we've met our quarterly family obligation quota. She didn't even look up from her phone. My mom will think you're avoiding her. I stared at her. That's because I'm avoiding her. Sophie sighed the way women sigh when they've accepted lifelong disappointment. Aaron, please. It's just dinner. You make it sound like a colonoscopy. At least those come with anesthesia. She rolled her eyes. We'll go. You'll be polite. No jokes about golf. No sarcasm about Chloe's boyfriend. And no commentary on the family group chat. I saluted her with my coffee mug. Yes, ma'am. I'll be a model citizen. Mr. Rogers with Wi-Fi. By Sunday evening, I was already regretting my life choices. We pulled up to Diana and Frank's suburban fortress, a Whitstone mansion that looked like it came with its own HOA police. The lawn was so perfectly trimmed, it could have been a hostage situation for grass blades. As we walked up the steps, I felt the same sense of dread soldiers must feel before battle. Only my war involved salad forks and passive aggression. Diane opened the door wearing a pearl necklace, a cashmere sweater, and enough perfume to trigger fire alarms. "Oh, you made it," she said, smiling like she just caught a raccoon rummaging through her recycling bin. "Traffic was light," I said. She stepped aside. "Take off your shoes. I just had the floors waxed." "Right." God forbid my inferior middle-class soul scuffed the sanctified marble. Inside the house looked like the cover of Modern Pretension Quarterly. Candlelight, linen tablecloth, crystal glasses that probably had their own trust funds. And there he was, the main attraction, Brandon, back for round 2, gleaming like a stock photo of success. The man looked photoshopped in real life, perfect hair, watched the size of my self-control and that smile, sharp, confident, and deeply punchable. "Hey, Aaron," he called out. "Good to see you, man." "Always a pleasure to experience déjà vu," I said, shaking his hand. Sophie elbowed me lightly. "Behave," she whispered through her teeth. Chloe floated in behind him, dressed in a gold cocktail dress that probably had its own Instagram account. "Isn't he amazing?" she said for what I swear was the 15th time in 2 weeks. "Yeah," I said. "He's like if Wi-Fi had an ego." They didn't hear me or pretended not to. Frank appeared from the den, golf sweater and all. "Aaron, son, you look good." "Thanks," I said. "I'm wearing my not in the mood for nonsense cologne." He didn't laugh. They never do. We sat down at the table, which looked less like a dining setup and more like a UN conference on wealth inequality. There were 12 settings for 6 people because Diana believes abundance equals holiness. As she poured wine, she smiled at Brandon. "So, Brandon, how's work? Chloe tells us your firm is thriving." "Can't complain," he said. "Closed a major deal last week. Some hedge fund merger thing. Confidential, of course." Of course. In Brandon speak, confidential meant imaginary. Frank nodded approvingly. "That's the spirit. Keep grinding. The market rewards the bold." I could practically see Brandon's ego inflating like a pool toy. "Exactly, sir. Risk is everything. You can't be afraid to make big moves." Diana's eyes sparkled. "And what about you, Aaron? Any big moves lately?" "Yeah," I said. "I upgraded my antivirus software." Silence. Forks clinkied. Sophie shot me her patented, "Please shut up before I strangle you in the car later" look. Chloe rescued the moment. "Anyway, Brandon just got invited to speak at a finance summit next month." I raised an eyebrow. "A summit? Wow, sounds fancy. Which one?" "Oh. Brandon hesitated. "It's kind of exclusive. Small group of professionals by invitation only, right?" I said, "So, like an MLM retreat?" He laughed too loudly, probably hoping no one caught the hesitation. "You're funny, man." Diana leaned forward. "Aaron, you should network more. Brandon says connections are everything." "Oh, I connect all the time," I said. "Usually Wi-Fi, sometimes Bluetooth." More silence. Somewhere in the distance, a cricket committed suicide. Dinner went on and the small talk got progressively worse. Frank talked about his golf swing as if it were a moral issue. Diana complained about lazy service staff. Chloe giggled at everything Brandon said, even when it wasn't remotely funny, and Sophie just kept sipping her wine like it was emotional armor. Halfway through the meal, Brandon turned to me. "So, Aaron, what do you actually do again? I keep hearing tech, but that's a pretty broad term." I swallowed my bite of chicken. "I run a software firm. We develop back-end systems for logistics companies." He nodded like a man pretending to understand algebra. "So, like websites?" "Sure," I said. "If NASA built websites for grocery stores," he laughed. "Hey, maybe you can help me out sometime. My company's building this new analytics platform and we're looking into some tech integration stuff, back-end algorithms and all that." "Really?" I asked. "What's the platform called?" He grinned. "StreamForge or something. It's still in talks though." My fork froze midair. "StreamForge? My company? Interesting," I said slowly. "And your firm's acquiring it?" "Yeah," he said proudly. "My team's handling the negotiations. Should finalize soon. Big deal for us." I looked across the table at Sophie, who was blissfully unaware she had just entered a live episode of Irony, the dinner edition. Then I looked back at him. "StreamForge," I repeated, pretending to think. "That's funny. I know that company." Brandon smirked. "Oh, yeah. You invest in tech?" "Something like that," I said, pulling my phone out of my pocket. "Here, let me show you something." He leaned in, probably expecting a meme or a dumb joke. I opened my email, the one from my legal team, confirming the acquisition details, and scrolled to the bottom where my name sat neatly above the title. Aaron Walker, CEO, Streamforge Technologies. His smile faltered just slightly, like his brain needed a minute to buffer. "You okay?" I asked, keeping my voice casual. Yeah, he said, blinking. "Just didn't realize you were involved." "Oh, I'm very involved," I said, taking a sip of wine. "We've been negotiating with your firm for months." "Funny, no one mentioned you." Diana looked between us, suspicious. "Wait, you're the CEO of that company?" "Since 2020, I said. "We specialize in predictive logistics, not just websites." Frank gave a low whistle. "Well, I'll be damned." Chloe looked at Brandon. "You said you were handling the deal." "I am," he stammered. "Just not directly." "Ah," I said. "So, you're like the spiritual handler manifesting synergy." Frank actually chuckled. I thought I saw Sophie bite her lip to keep from smiling. Diana cleared her throat. "Well, isn't that interesting?" "Small world, tiny," I said. "Practically microscopic." The rest of dinner went quiet. Brandon suddenly had nothing to say about finance, mindset, or thriving. Chloe stared at her plate like it had betrayed her. And me? I just kept eating, smiling politely, like a man who'd spent 2 hours in hell and finally found air conditioning. When dessert arrived, Diana tried to salvage the atmosphere. "So, Aaron, you must be thrilled about this acquisition." "Oh, definitely," I said. "It's a great step forward. We're expanding internationally." Brandon cleared his throat. "Congrats, man. Really impressive." "Thanks," I said. "Maybe next time your firm can keep you in the loop." He forced a laugh that sounded like a dying engine. After dinner, as we stood in the foyer saying our polite goodbyes, Diana hugged Sophie tightly. "You two drive safe." "All right." Then she turned to me. "And Aaron, congratulations. You never mentioned your company was that successful." "You never asked," I said, smiling. Brandon extended his hand again. "No hard feelings, man. Business is business." I shook it. "Of course. And hey, if you ever need back and help, I know a guy." Sophie grabbed my arm before I could add more sarcasm to the world. We walked out to the car in silence, the crisp night air thick with awkwardness. Once inside, Sophie exhaled. "You just had to do that." "Do what?" "Tell the truth. You could have waited. You embarrassed him." "Correction," I said, starting the engine. "He embarrassed himself. I just turned the lights on." She crossed her arms. "My mom's going to freak out." "Yeah," I said, "and that's the sound of me not caring." As we pulled away, I looked back through the windshield and saw Brandon still standing in the doorway, jaw tight, probably calculating how to spin this disaster into a LinkedIn post about humility and growth. I almost felt bad for him, almost. But then I remembered every smug smirk, every real job comment, every lecture about success, and suddenly the wine tasted sweeter. The Hollis family always preached about knowing your worth. Tonight they finally learned mine. And this was only the appetizer. If there's one thing I've learned about the Hollis family, it's that they treat humiliation like it's a team sport. They don't need referees. Just a dinner table, a bottle of wine, and someone to sacrifice. Spoiler alert, that someone is always me. We were back at Diana's the following weekend because apparently family bonding is code for weekly emotional dodgeball. The moment we walked in, I could already tell it was going to be a long night. The smell of rosemary chicken hit me like déjà vu. Same food, same decor, same tension disguised as hospitality. I half expected Diana to hand me a name tag that said designated punching bag. Brandon was there, of course, because life doesn't love me that much. The man had recovered surprisingly fast from last week's ego demolition. Either that or he was too dense to realize he'd been metaphorically stripped naked in front of everyone. He greeted me with that same slick smile. "Aaron, my man," he said as if nothing had happened. "Good to see you again, Brandon," I said. "You're like a sequel no one asked for." Sophie's fingers dug into my arm. "Be nice," she whispered. "Mom's already tense." "She's always tense," I muttered. Her shoulders have been in permanent credit card bill position since 198. The table was already set, perfectly symmetrical. Of course, Diana treats centerpieces like religious relics. Tonight's theme was rustic autumn glamour, which meant pumpkins that cost more than my car insurance. Frank sat at the head of the table, carving something like he was auditioning for a Ginsu commercial. Chloe hovered near Brandon, glowing with that mix of infatuation and delusion that only people dating con artists have. "Dinner's ready," Diana sang, which in her dialect means prepare to be judged. We sat down. I mentally prepared for impact. For the first 10 minutes, it was the usual chatter. Frank talking about golf as if it were a philosophical pursuit. Chloe bragging about her latest brand collab podcast no one asked for, and Diana dropping subtle digs wrapped in compliments. Then came the moment, the shift in tone, the point where the roast began. "So, Brandon," Frank said between bites, "how's the acquisition going?" "That what was it called again?" "Streamline." "Streamforge," I said automatically, smiling into my mashed potatoes. Right, Frank said. "How's that going, Brandon?" Brandon's fork froze midair. "Oh, it's all good," he said, forcing a grin. "Just normal business delays." "Really?" I asked innocently. "Because I thought the deal went through last Thursday." His eyes flicked toward me and I swear I saw smoke come out of his ears. "Oh yeah," he said quickly. "That's what I meant. Closed Thursday. Big win for our firm." "Congrats," I said, raising my glass. It's always great when people learn about their company's milestones from other people. Sophie kicked me under the table so hard my soul briefly left my body. Diana laughed awkwardly. "So, who's excited for dessert?" But the conversation refused to duck. Brandon wasn't the type to take a loss quietly. He was the kind of guy who would arm wrestle a priest over a parking spot. "You know, Aaron," he said, flashing that fake friendly smile. "I was telling Chloe earlier, it's inspiring that you run your own tech business. Takes guts to try something like that." "Try," I said, cocking an eyebrow. "Yeah, you know," he continued. "Startups are risky. Most don't make it. My team actually studied a few cases where founders lost everything. I mean, not saying you will, but you know how it goes." "Ah, yes," the classic backhanded compliment. The man was a living LinkedIn post. Diana chuckled nervously. "Brandon, don't scare him." I smiled sweetly. "I'm not scared. My company's already profitable, which is more than I can say for most people's stories." Chloe's fork hit her plate. "Aaron, could you not?" I shrugged. "Just clarifying. I'd hate for misinformation to spread. It's contagious in this family." The table went quiet for a second. The kind of silence that hums like an electric wire. Then Brandon laughed a little too loudly. "Man, I love your sense of humor." "Thanks," I said. "It's hereditary. Got it from my survival instinct." That's when he decided to go for it. To take the swing that he thought would win the crowd. So he said, leaning back in his chair, "Funny story, one of my coworkers once tried to launch a little app, spent 6 months coding, made like $5, and called himself an entrepreneur. Reminds me of he looked straight at me. Of course he did. You, Aaron," he said, grinning. "Didn't you say you started small, too?" The room erupted with laughter. Chloe giggling, Diana covering her mouth like she didn't want to, but totally did. Even Frank smirking behind his glass. And Sophie, God bless her, laughed too, though hers was more nervous than mean. I laughed too, quietly, calmly. 'Cause the trick with narcissists is to let them think they're winning before you hand them the bill. "Yeah," I said, "and I started small. But I guess the difference between us is I finished big." Brandon's smirk faltered. "What's that supposed to mean?" I looked him dead in the eye. "It means I didn't have to fake my company's achievements to impress people at dinner." The laughter died faster than his portfolio. Diana coughed into her napkin. Sophie whispered my name like a prayer and a threat at once, but I wasn't done. Nope. If they wanted a roast, I was about to serve it medium rare. "So tell me, Brandon," I said, voice smooth, "when you said you handled the Streamforge deal, did you mean handle as in read about it on Twitter, or handle as in make coffee for the people who did the work?" Frank choked on his wine. Diana froze mid-reach for her napkin. Chloe turned red. Brandon blinked rapidly. I think there's been a misunderstanding." "Oh, I don't think so," I said. "But hey, good for you. Most people need years to build a career before embarrassing themselves. You did it in 2 dinners." He tried to recover. "Wow, you've got a mouth on you." "Thanks," I said. "It's called confidence. You should try it sometime. Preferably in a job interview." The air in that room could have been bottled and sold as tension perfume. Even the chandelier looked nervous. Sophie finally spoke up. "Aaron, enough." I leaned back. "I'm good. I'm just participating in the family's new tradition, roasting the guest." Diana cleared her throat. Nobody was roasting anyone. Brandon was just joking. "Sure," I said. Joking like how the Titanic was just docking. Frank tried to change the subject. "So, football season, huh?" Nobody bit. Chloe stood abruptly. I think we're done here. Brandon followed her, muttering something about unprofessional behavior. The front door slammed like punctuation. Silence. Then Diana said it. The sentence I knew was coming. Delivered with the precision of a guillotine. Aaron, that was incredibly rude. Was it? I said, because I thought honesty was a virtue around here. You know, family values and all that. You embarrassed him, she said. He embarrassed himself. I replied. I just didn't cover for him. Sophie was staring at me, torn between pride and fury. You could have been nicer. I could have, I said, but then he might have thought I respected him. Diana sighed dramatically. You don't understand what it means to maintain social grace. No, I said, standing up. I just understand what it means not to worship frauds. Frank looked at me and cracked the faintest grin. He was kind of full of it. Frank, Diana snapped. What he was. Frank said, man talked more buzzwords than CNBC. For the first time in my life, I actually liked the guy. We wrapped up dinner early. Diana didn't even offer dessert, which in her world was the equivalent of being excommunicated. As Sophie and I put on our coats, she whispered, you couldn't just let it go, could you? Nope, I said. Letting things go is for yoga instructors and guilty politicians. On the drive home, she didn't say much. The silence wasn't angry. It was tired. Finally, she said, you didn't have to humiliate him. I glanced at her. You think I humiliated him? I think I prevented him from humiliating me again. Tomato, tomato. She shook her head, but didn't argue. Probably because deep down, she knew I was right. Back home, I poured myself a drink and sat in the dark living room, replaying the dinner in my head. Normally, I'd feel guilty after something like that, like I'd crossed a line. But not tonight. Tonight, it felt justified. For years, I had played the role of the quiet guy, the one who laughed off the insults, smiled through the shade, and took the moral high ground while everyone else tap-danced on my patience. But somewhere between the second glass of wine and Brandon's last smirk, something snapped. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was self-respect. Maybe it was the cumulative effect of being everyone's punchline. Either way, it felt good to fire back for once. My phone buzzed. A text from Frank. Next time, leave a little for the rest of us. That was brutal. Golf next week. I grinned. Maybe the night hadn't been a total loss. Upstairs, Sophie was already in bed, scrolling through her phone with the expression of someone Googling how to undo marriage choices. I climbed in beside her and said, so, no family dinners for a while? She looked at me, lips twitching despite herself. You're impossible. Thanks, I said. I try. She rolled her eyes, but I could see the faint smile creeping through. We both knew the truth. For the first time in forever, I hadn't just survived the dinner. I'd owned it. And if that made me the villain in the Hollis family narrative, so be it. Every story needs one, especially the funny ones. By Monday morning, my phone was vibrating like a beehive with anger issues. The Hollis family group chat #blessed of course was exploding with messages. The last time it was that active was when Diana found out someone brought store-bought pie to Thanksgiving. I scrolled through the chaos. Diana. Aaron. That dinner was unacceptable. Chloe, you're toxic. Frank, did anyone else think the chicken was dry? Diana. Frank. Sophie. We'll talk later. Beautiful. Nothing like waking up to digital disappointment. I tossed the phone on the bed and muttered. And they say technology connects people. Sophie was still getting dressed for work, buttoning her blouse like she was fastening her patience. You could at least respond, she said. I did, I replied. By not responding. That's communication, too. It's just peaceful, she sighed. You embarrassed them, Aaron. No, that's sin, I said, sipping coffee. And they embarrassed themselves. I just handed out mirrors. She spun around, hairbrush in hand like a gavel. Do you ever listen to yourself? Constantly. I said it's part of what makes me so interesting. Sophie groaned and left for work, muttering something about damage control. I could practically hear Diana dictating her talking points through the Bluetooth. By noon, my phone buzzed again. This time, a direct text from Diana. Lunch today, 100 p.m. Be there alone. It wasn't a request. It was an order from the Empress of Etiquette. I stared at the message, debating whether to fake my own death. Instead, I texted back. Sure, do I need to dress for the execution or is casual fine? No reply, just a read receipt. Chilling. At 1 p.m. sharp, I pulled up to La Creme, a restaurant so pretentious it probably charged extra for oxygen. Diana was already there, of course, sipping water with lemon and judgment. Her posture was so perfect it made me want to slouch on principle. "Aaron," she said, smiling that smile politicians give right before raising taxes. "Thank you for coming." "My pleasure," I said, sitting down. "I was just telling my therapist I needed more emotional challenges." She didn't laugh, not even a twitch. The waiter came over visibly terrified of her aura. "Can I start you with 2 salads?" she said. "No dressing for me." "He'll have ranch." "Wow," I said. "Telepathy. Impressive." She folded her napkin neatly. "Aaron, we need to talk about your behavior." "Here it comes." The family court summons in human form. "You humiliated Brandon," she said, "in front of everyone. That reflects poorly on this family, right?" I said, "Because the real issue isn't that your daughter brought a fraud to dinner. It's that I noticed." She pursed her lips. "You could have handled it privately." "Oh, like you handle things privately by sending public group texts with passive-aggressive Bible verses." Her eyes narrowed. "You think this is funny?" "I think this is tragic," I said. "A whole family more concerned with appearances than truth. You guys could trademark denial." She leaned forward. "Aaron, you have to understand something. Our family has a reputation. Frank's colleagues, my charity circle. We can't afford drama. Then stop inviting it to dinner," I said. The waiter arrived with the salads, looking like he'd wandered into a hostage situation. We both thanked him, me sincerely, her, with a tone that implied she'd inspect his resume later. Diana poked her lettuce and said, "You don't get it. Families like ours thrive on unity. We present a solid front. No cracks." "You're not a family," I said, "you're a PR campaign." She froze mid-chew. "Excuse me? You heard me. You guys care more about optics than honesty. It's not unity. It's image control. And I'm tired of being the scapegoat because I don't play along." Her voice dropped an octave. "Do not make the family look bad." I laughed. I actually laughed. Right there at the table. A sharp, unfiltered laugh that made nearby diners turn. "That's your line. Don't make the family look bad. Diana, your daughter's boyfriend literally lied about a multi-million-dollar acquisition at dinner, and you're worried about me looking bad." She blinked speechless for a moment. "That was new. You have no idea how the world works." She finally said, "Like in this family, perception is everything." "Then I'm in the wrong family," I said. That shut her up. Not for long. And though she recovered fast, like a villain in a Marvel movie. "Frank and I raised our daughters to value ambition and presentation. She said, Sophie understands that. That's why she's successful, but you?" She waved her hand as if gesturing at a broken appliance. "You seem determined to drag her down." I stared at her. "You mean she's successful because she married someone who doesn't need to perform for your approval? Because she works hard?" Diana snapped. "She didn't marry a man who hides behind computers all day." Ah, there it was. The final boss of mother-in-law insults. I smiled. "You're right. I don't work hard. I just run a company people like your fake son-in-law pretend to work for." Her nostrils flared like Wi-Fi signals. "You think sarcasm makes you clever?" "No," I said, "but it makes this lunch bearable." She exhaled sharply. "You're impossible. Do you ever consider how your behavior affects Sophie? She's mortified. Really, because she hasn't said that to me. In fact, she's mostly said, 'Aaron, please pass the salt.' And 'Aaron, don't crash the car while thinking about setting my mom's curtains on fire.'" Diana slammed her fork down. "You are disrespectful, and you are allergic to accountability," I said. "We all have conditions." For a second, I thought she might actually throw the salad at me, but she didn't. She straightened her back, the royal composure returning like armor. "You're lucky Sophie loves you. Otherwise, I'd tell her to reconsider this marriage." I leaned forward, smiling sweetly. "You're welcome to try, but I think she'd rather divorce the family than me." The look on her face, priceless, like I just told her brunch was cancelled forever. The rest of the lunch was silent, minus the sound of tension chewing. When the check came, I reached for it, but she beat me to it, slapping her card down like a mic drop. "I'll pay," she said. "You can't afford the cost of this conversation." "Oh, I can afford it," I said. "I just don't like tipping for emotional manipulation." She signed the receipt with flair and stood up. "I hope you'll think about what I said." "I will," I said right after my nap. She walked off, heels clicking like a closing argument. I finished my ranch-soaked salad in peace. When I got home, Sophie was waiting on the couch, arms crossed, laptop open, face tense. "Mom called me." She said. "Of course she did," I said, hanging my jacket. "Did she tell you I'm the Antichrist yet? Or is that scheduled for tomorrow?" She said you were cruel. Correction, I said. I was concise. She pinched the bridge of her nose. Aaron, she's worried about the family's image. You humiliated Chloe's boyfriend and now everyone's talking. Good, I said. Let them talk. Maybe it'll distract them from their own nonsense. She frowned. It's not that simple. My mom's friends are donors for my firm's wellness foundation. This could look bad. Ah, there it was again. The sacred family brand. So, let me get this straight. I said, I expose a liar. Protect your sister from getting scammed, and I'm the one making the family look bad. She hesitated. It's not about who's right. It's about optics. I stared at her. Wow, you really are your mother's daughter. That one hit, I could see it land. She looked away, arms folding tighter. I didn't mean I started. No, she said quietly. You did. We sat in silence. The kind that fills the room like fog, thick and uncomfortable. Finally, she said, you can't keep fighting them like this. I'm not fighting them, I said. I'm defending myself. There's a difference. You think every dinner needs to be a battlefield, she said. No, I said. But they keep bringing the cannons, she sighed softer now. I just wish you'd let things go sometimes. I wish they'd stopped giving me things to hold. We looked at each other for a long moment. Two people who loved each other but spoke completely different dialects of sanity. I'll fix it, she said finally. You can't fix it, I said, because it's not broken. It's just real and they can't stand real. She didn't reply. She just closed her laptop and went upstairs. I sat there alone scrolling through my phone until I found something that made me smile. A text from Frank. You're not wrong, just bad at delivery. Next golf game's on me. I chuckled. At least one Hollis has had taste. Before bed, Sophie reappeared at the doorway. Promise me one thing, she said. What's that? Next time we see them, try not to make the family look bad. I grinned. Deal. I'll make them look honest instead. She rolled her eyes, but her lips twitched. Good night, Aaron. Good night, Mrs. PR Damage Control, she laughed to spite herself. And as she turned off the light, I thought, funny thing about people obsessed with image. They never realize the truth doesn't ruin reputations, it just reveals them. I used to think change comes slowly, like rust creeping up on metal or your favorite jeans getting too tight over the years. Turns out sometimes it just walks into dinner wearing an overpriced watch and a fake resume. After that lunch with Diana, I told myself I'd play it cool for a while. Lay low, let the Hollis PR storm pass. But life had other plans. It always does. Because a week later, Sophie got a family dinner reminder text from her mom. Again, I asked, glancing up from my laptop. Didn't we just survive one? She grimaced. She said it's important. Apparently, there's an announcement. Let me guess, I said. Chloe's launching another business, essential oils for emotionally unavailable people. Sophie didn't laugh. Please don't start. I'm not starting, I said. I'm just mentally preparing like soldiers do before battle. She sighed, shutting her laptop. Just promise me no fireworks this time. I don't have the energy to referee another argument. Promise? I said, holding up a hand. No sarcasm, no confrontations. I'll be zen like a Buddhist monk in a tech hoodie. Of course, that promise lasted exactly 40 minutes. When we arrived in LA, the Hollis house looked suspiciously cheerful. Candles, music, wine already poured. That's never a good sign. It's what they call ambience right before an emotional ambush. Ah, you're here, Diana chirped, kissing Sophie on the cheek and offering me the world's tightest smile. Aaron, so lovely to see you. You, too, I said. I've missed our constructive conversations about how I ruin family dinners. She blinked. Excuse me? Nothing. I said, nice chandelier. Brandon was already there, sitting like he owned the place, still slick, still smug, but there was something different about him this time. Maybe it was the way he avoided eye contact. Or maybe it was the subtle panic vibe radiating off him, like cheap cologne. Chloe was glued to his side, scrolling through her phone like it held her self-worth. Frank poured himself a drink the size of my confidence. Let's eat, he said. Before the chicken gets cold, we sat and for about 5 peaceful minutes, things were almost normal. If you ignored Diana's twitch every time I picked up my fork. So, Brandon, Frank said between bites, you were saying something about your company expanding. Brandon perked up like a man auditioning for redemption. Yes, big things happening. We're looking into some acquisitions. Streamforge was just the beginning. I froze. Sophie's hand immediately went to my leg. A silent don't. But I wasn't planning to say anything. Not yet. Streamforge? Diane asked. That's Aaron's company, isn't it? Brandon laughed nervously. Yeah. Small world, right? Very small, I said. Microscopic even. He cleared his throat. Anyway, we're targeting a few other tech startups, diversifying our portfolio. We've got major investors interested, billionaires even. I smiled into my wine glass. Oh, which ones? Bezos, Musk, the Monopoly man? Chloe giggled automatically. Her usual defense mechanism when someone sounds confident. Don't tease him, Aaron, she said. He's really doing big things. Oh, I'm sure, I said. I'm just curious. Always love hearing about success stories, especially imaginary ones. Sophie muttered, Aaron. Under her breath, like a parent in a supermarket with a feral toddler. Brandon shot me a tight smile. You know, man, you've got a lot of opinions for someone who works from home. Oh, don't undersell me, I said. I own from home. That landed like a grenade. Frank coughed. Diana blinked rapidly, pretending to admire the centerpiece. Sophie closed her eyes like she was summoning patience from the universe. Brandon forced a laugh. You're funny, man, but seriously, I respect what you do. Tech's cool and all. It's just not real business. Real business? I repeated. You mean pretending to be a finance guru while mispronouncing the word dividend? He bristled. You've got a lot of nerve and you've got a lot of audacity for someone whose job title changes every dinner. Diana jumped in like an emergency broadcast system. Gentlemen, please let's keep this civilized. Oh, I'm civilized, I said. I'm just fluent in facts. That's when it happened. The shift. Brandon leaned back, smirking, trying to take control again. You know what, Aaron? You talk big, but guys like you are all the same. You hide behind your computer and think you're changing the world. Meanwhile, people like me are out there actually moving money, making deals, running industries. I smiled slowly. That's funny, Brandon, because I checked with your firm's board last week. His face twitched. You what? Yeah, I said casually. Turns out your company isn't acquiring Streamforge. It's being investigated for falsifying investor documents. The silence that followed could have ended civilizations. Chloe froze, forked midair. Diana gasped so loudly I thought she might summon angels. Frank muttered, oh, hell. Under his breath. Brandon stammered, that's not accurate. Who told you? I tapped my phone, pulling up the email from my lawyer. SEC filings are public, Brandon. You should know that. You're in finance, remember? He went pale. You had no right. Oh, I had every right, I said, voice calm, but cutting. You used my company's name to inflate your image at this table. So, yeah, I did some fact-checking. Turns out you're not even officially employed at that firm anymore. You were let go last month. Chloe's hand dropped her wine glass. It shattered against the tile like the sound of karma and surround sound. Wait, what? She said. You said you left voluntarily. Brandon swallowed hard. Babe, it's complicated. Complicated? She said. Like fraud complicated or unemployment complicated? Sophie whispered, oh my God. And leaned back, covering her face. Diana looked like she'd just witnessed a crime scene at her dining table. This is unbelievable. I smiled politely. Not really. It's just math. Brandon stood up abruptly, his chair scraping the floor. You're lying. I'm literally showing you the documents, I said, turning my phone toward him. You can't fake a termination notice unless you're also bad at Photoshop, which you probably are. He glared at me. You think you're better than me statistically tonight? Yeah. Frank actually snorted loudly. Diana smacked his arm. Chloe was shaking now, tears pooling in her eyes. You told me you were going to buy a house. You said you had investors. Babe, I was going to tell you, Brandon said, reaching for her hand. She pulled back. Don't babe me. You lied to everyone. Diana stood up, gripping the back of her chair. Get out of my house. Brandon blinked. Diana, come on now. She snapped. Before I call security. And yes, we have security because this is a real home, not an Instagram backdrop. He hesitated, looked at Chloe again, then grabbed his jacket and stormed out. The front door slammed so hard one of Diana's fancy sconces rattled. And then silence, sweet, golden, cinematic silence. I took a slow sip of wine, savoring the flavor of poetic justice. Chloe sat there, stunned. He lied to me. Sophie reached over, rubbing her back gently. I'm sorry, Chloe. Diana was pacing, muttering to herself about the reputations and screening procedures. Frank just leaned back in his chair, looking oddly satisfied. Finally, Diana turned to me. You couldn't have done that privately. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, you mean like how Brandon publicly insulted me in this exact room multiple times? She blinked, lips tight. Still, there's a time and a place. This was the time, I said. And your table was definitely the place. Sophie gave me the errand, stop talking before I divorced you. Look, so I sat back and stayed quiet for once. After a while, Chloe wiped her eyes and said softly, "Thank you, Aaron." I looked at her, surprised. For what? For telling the truth, even if it sucked. I nodded. Truth usually does. We finished dinner in awkward silence. No one mentioned dessert. Diana didn't even offer coffee, which I'm pretty sure is her version of cutting someone out of the will. On the drive home, Sophie didn't speak for 10 minutes. I didn't push it. Finally, she said, "You really had to go nuclear, huh?" "Technically," I said. "It was a precision strike," she sighed but smiled faintly. "You know, for someone who claims to hate drama, you create a lot of it." "I don't create it," I said. "I just reply to it in high definition," she laughed quietly. "You're impossible." "Yeah," I said, "but at least I'm honest." She looked at me then, really looked and nodded. "You are, and that's kind of what I love about you." I grinned. "Careful. That sounds dangerously like a compliment." "Don't get used to it," she said. By the time we got home, the adrenaline had faded, replaced by something quieter, relief maybe, or clarity. The kind that comes when the truth finally kicks the door in and sits down at the table you've been pretending is fine. Lying in bed later, Sophie said, "You know this isn't over, right? Mom's going to call tomorrow." "Let her," I said. "I've got unlimited minutes and limited patience." She laughed again, softer this time. And as I drifted off, I realized something had shifted. Not just in the family dynamic, but in me. For years, I'd played defense, biting my tongue while they took shots. But now, I wasn't the quiet one anymore. I wasn't the tech guy or the weird one who doesn't golf. I was the truth teller, the chaos distributor, the man who finally stopped being polite to people who mistook politeness for weakness. And somewhere deep down, I knew the next dinner was going to be legendary. You ever see that moment in a courtroom movie where the defense lawyer pulls out the one document that flips the whole trial, the gasp, the stunned silence, the camera zoom? Yeah, that was me at Diana's dinner table last week, except instead of a legal drama, it was Keeping Up with the Hollises. And my surprise witness was the truth. By Monday morning, my phone looked like it had been through a political scandal. Missed calls, voicemails, texts from numbers I didn't even recognize. Apparently, Diana had a whole network of gossip associates. Sophie was on her laptop pacing the living room, muttering about damage control like a campaign manager. "Your mother called me to tell me I need to call her?" I asked, sipping my coffee. "That's like sending an email about how to stop emailing." Sophie glared at me over the screen. "Aaron, this isn't funny." "Oh, it's hilarious," I said. "I've been waiting 3 years for Karma to buy a ticket to one of those dinners. I just didn't think it'd bring fireworks." She set her laptop down with a sigh. "Chloe's devastated. She's been crying all weekend." "Good," I said. "Tears are cleansing. She'll be fine. She's got 12,000 followers who will tell her she's brave." Sophie folded her arms. "You could show a little empathy." "I did," I said. "I empathize by not saying I told you so. Out loud." She rubbed her temples. "You embarrassed my family. I exposed a liar. There's a difference. Semantics don't fix feelings, Aaron. Neither do delusions, Sophie." She stared at me for a long second, then sighed again. "I just wish it hadn't happened like that." "Yeah," I said. "I wish they hadn't worshipped a man who thought back-end system meant glutes day, but here we are." Before she could reply, my phone buzzed again, this time from an unknown number. I picked it up. "Hello." A hesitant voice said, "Mr. Walker, this is Chloe." "Ah, the fallen princess speaks." "Hey, Chloe," I said cautiously. She sniffled. I wanted to say, thank you." That stopped me. "For what?" "For telling the truth," she said quietly. "Brandon admitted everything. The lies, the fake investors, even that he used my name to pitch some fake crypto project." "Oof," I said. "Crypto's the new pyramid scheme with extra steps." She laughed weakly. "Yeah, you're not wrong." "So, what now?" I asked. "I told him we're done," she said. "And Mom's furious, obviously. But I think part of her is embarrassed. She keeps saying this is going to ruin our family's reputation." I rolled my eyes so hard I saw my childhood, right? Because nothing screams bad optics like not wanting to be scammed. Chloe hesitated. She's blaming you, by the way. Of course she is, I said. In Diana's world, I'm the default scapegoat. The Wi-Fi goes out. Aaron's fault. Global inflation. Probably something I coded wrong. I just wanted to tell you I don't blame you, she said softly. Well, I said that's progress. The first Hollis to ever say those words. Mark the calendar. She chuckled a little watery. Thanks again. Really? After she hung up, I sat there for a while, staring at my coffee, and it was weird hearing her sound human for once. Vulnerable even. Like the golden child finally realized gold can rust. When Sophie came back downstairs, she asked, "Who was that?" "Your sister," I said. "She dumped Brandon." Sophie blinked. "Seriously?" "Yep. Turns out integrity is contagious. Don't worry, though. Your mom's still immune." Sophie gave me that half-annoyed, half-impressed look. "You know, you're a lot to handle." "Thanks," I said. "So's the truth." That evening, Diana called, and when I say called, I mean she summoned. The phone rang twice before Sophie picked up on speaker. "Sweetheart." Diana's voice came through sharp and frosty. "Put Aaron on." I mouthed. "Don't you dare." But Sophie handed me the phone anyway. "Diana," I said cheerfully. "What an unexpected delight." "Cut the act," she snapped. "You've humiliated this family." "I didn't humiliate anyone. Brandon did that himself. You could have handled it privately." "Ah, yes," I said. Like how he publicly called me unemployed or how Chloe laughed at his jokes while I got to be the dinner clown. "Watch your tone." "Can't. It's automatic." She sighed heavily. "You don't understand what you've done. People talk, Aaron. Word travels. This kind of scandal reflects on all of us." "Diana," I said, "your family's idea of reputation is a glass chandelier, fragile, expensive, and one loud truth away from shattering." Sophie buried her face in a pillow. There was a pause on the line. Then Diana said coldly, "You're an ungrateful man." "And you're welcome for the reality check," I said and hung up. Sophie sat up. "Did you just hang up on my mother?" "Yep, you can't just I can," I said. And I did. And honestly, it felt better than therapy. The next few days were weirdly quiet. No texts, no calls, not even Frank's usual memes about golf being life's metaphor. It was peaceful, like the eye of a hurricane. Until Friday. That's when Sophie came home like a live grenade. "You're trending," she said. I blinked. "What?" "Trending on Facebook." I grabbed her phone. There it was. A photo of me at Diana's dinner table mid-speech, wine glass raised. Someone, probably Chloe's friend with the constant Instagram reflex, had taken a picture during the Brandon showdown. The caption read, "When your brother-in-law exposes your sister's scammer boyfriend, mid-dinner family dinner gone wrong. Chesh drama, respect the tech guy." The post had gone semi-viral. Thousands of comments, half roasting the Hollises, half cheering me on. One read, "That's not a son-in-law. That's a whistleblower," another said, "just as served with mashed potatoes." I couldn't stop laughing. Oh my god, I'm a meme. Sophie wasn't as amused. "This is bad, Aaron. My mom's going to combust. Then we should get fire insurance." "Aaron, no. Seriously," I said. "Look at the bright side. You're married to the internet's favorite dinner guest. That's got to count for something." She pinched the bridge of her nose. "I swear if my mom sees this buzz incoming call." She looked at me. "Speak of the devil. Put her on speaker," I said. Sophie hesitated and then did it. Diana's voice came through like a tornado wearing pearls. "Do you know what you've done?" "I'd guess a public service." I said, "This is a nightmare. My friends have seen that photo. They're messaging me. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is?" "Yes," I said. "That's kind of the point." "Take it down," she demanded. "I didn't post it." "Then find whoever did." "Sure, I'll call the internet and ask to speak to the manager." Frank's voice chimed faintly in the background. "Honey, let it go." "I will not let it go," she snapped. "Our family looks ridiculous." "Correction," I said. "Your obsession with image looks ridiculous. The rest of us look free." Sophie finally grabbed the phone and ended the call. "You really have no filter, do you?" "I have one," I said. "I just choose not to use it around people who need subtitles for reality." She stared at me for a second, then burst out laughing. And that's when it hit me. The shift, not just in her, but in everything. For years, I'd been the outsider, The odd one out in a family of curated perfection. The quiet tech guy, the polite husband who smiled through insults because it was easier. But that night at dinner changed everything. I wasn't the punchline anymore. I was the line, the one that split their world in two before and after. The next morning, Sophie told me Chloe had called again. Apparently, she'd confronted Diana and told her to stop controlling everything. I nearly spit out my cereal. Chloe said that. Yeah, Sophie said, smiling faintly. She told Mom she needs to chill out and stop caring so much about what people think. Well, I said. I guess miracles are real. She also said she's applying for a real job. Something about wanting to earn things for once. Look at that, I said. Character development, Sophie laughed. You're terrible. Honest, I corrected. Not terrible. Later that week, Frank texted me again. That dinner was the best entertainment I've had in years. Don't tell Diana I said that. I texted back, your secret's safe? Mostly, it felt good. Light, even like someone had turned down the constant noise in my head for the first time since marrying into the Hollis circus. I wasn't walking on eggshells. I wasn't filtering myself for the sake of keeping the peace because peace built on pretending isn't peace. It's a hostage situation with good table settings. So yeah, I'd exposed a liar, angered my mother-in-law, and accidentally gone viral. But you know what? I'd also reminded everyone, including myself, that truth isn't ugly. It just doesn't wear makeup. And if that made me the family villain, fine. I'll bring my own cape next time. If life were a movie, this is where the screen would fade to black. The crowd would cheer and I'd walk off into the sunset while a slow-motion replay of Brandon's downfall rolled behind me. But this isn't Hollywood. This is the Hollises. And in the Hollis universe, every victory comes with an aftershock. The week after the dinner that broke the internet, as Twitter kindly called it, felt like I'd become a trending topic nobody wanted to admit. That they secretly agreed with. My inbox was full of messages from coworkers and old college buddies. Bro, that dinner clip legendary. Teach me your rose technique. Can we use your face on a meme template? Meanwhile, Sophie was alternating between pride and existential dread. I love you, she said one morning while buttering toast. But I'm also terrified of what you'll do next. Same, I said. That's what keeps the marriage exciting. She gave me a look that said, this is not the excitement I ordered. By Wednesday, things had quieted down online. Anyway, offline, Diana was apparently forming her own task force to restore the Hollis image. I know this because Frank texted me a screenshot of her Facebook post. Sometimes storms reveal who's truly anchored. How family resilience grace under fire. Translation: Aaron embarrassed us and I'm pretending to be noble while plotting revenge. Frank captioned it, you might want to buy popcorn. So yeah, I was public enemy number one in suburban high society land. But for the first time in years, I didn't care. It was liberating, like I'd finally stopped auditioning for a role I never wanted. Then Friday hit, and with it, the next episode of You Thought It Was Over. Sophie came home looking like she'd aged a decade. Mom's hosting a clarity dinner on Sunday, she said, collapsing onto the couch. A what now? She says it's a peaceful evening for open conversation. Translation: ambush, she groaned. She said she wants everyone to heal. I raised an eyebrow. Is she hiring a shaman or are we just passing around scented candles while she screams about reputation again? Aaron, Sophie, she sighed. Please just behave this time. No jokes, no smart remarks. Just smile, eat, and let Mom feel in control for once. Sure, I said. And maybe pigs will start filing taxes. She threw a pillow at me. Sunday arrived faster than logic. As we drove there, I could feel Sophie's anxiety radiating through the car. Maybe this won't be so bad, she said. That's adorable, I replied. Delusional, but adorable. We pulled into the driveway. Same house, same curated perfection. Only this time, there were extra cars parked outside. Diana had apparently invited reinforcements. When we walked in, I saw a mix of familiar faces. Her charity friends, a pastor from their church, even a local journalist, she probably bribed with casseroles. Ah, the prodigal son, Frank said from the bar, pouring himself whiskey like it was medicine. Nice crowd, I said. Are we doing interventions now? Diana appeared in full pearls and power stance mode. Aaron, she said warmly. Too warmly. Thank you for coming. Of course, I said. Wouldn't miss my own trial. Sophie pinched my arm so hard I almost confessed to crimes I didn't commit. Dinner was tense to say the least. Diana started with a speech about truth, forgiveness, and growth. The irony nearly gave me hives. I believe she said that every family faces challenges. Ours has had its share recently, but we must remember to present ourselves with grace and discretion. Translation: Aaron, shut up in public. Everyone nodded like she'd just solved world peace. I just smiled and reached for the potatoes. Then she pivoted. Aaron dear, perhaps you'd like to share your perspective. Ah, there it was. The trap. The velvet line noose. Sure, I said, setting down my fork. My perspective? Well, I think honesty is underrated and that pretending everything's perfect is exhausting. Also, your chicken's a little dry this time. Frank choked on his drink. Sophie groaned. Diana's smile didn't move an inch. You seem proud of your little spectacle. Not proud, I said, just relieved. It's nice not to be the family punching bag for once. You humiliated us, she said. I told the truth, I countered. Same thing. There it was again. The Hollis gospel appearances over authenticity. Her charity friend chimed in. Aaron, maybe you could have been more diplomatic. Diplomatic? I said he lied about buying my company. If I'd been more diplomatic, he'd be teaching a TED talk by now called Fake It Until You Fraud It. Even Frank laughed at that loudly. Diana glared at daggers at him. Chloe finally spoke up, quiet but steady. Mom, Aaron's right. Brandon lied to all of us. We needed to know. Diana looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. Chloe, sweetheart, there's a time and place for everything. Yeah, Chloe said, voice rising. And Aaron picked the perfect one. 'Cause if he hadn't, I'd still be paying off that loser's credit card debt. Mike, drop. The table went silent. Even I was impressed. Diana blinked, clearly recalibrating. Well, that's unfortunate. Unfortunate? Chloe said. You told me to bring him. You said he was a strong match. I leaned back. Strong match like gasoline and fire. Sophie kicked me under the table again, but I caught a tiny smirk trying to escape her lips. Diana cornered went full politician. The important thing, she said, is that we learn from this. We must protect our family's integrity moving forward. I couldn't resist. Maybe start by verifying LinkedIn profiles. Enough, she snapped. I'm trying to salvage our reputation. Diana, I said softly. The only thing that needs salvaging is your idea of reputation. The rest of us are fine. You could have heard a salad leaf drop. Then Frank spoke calm as ever. He's right, Di. She turned to him, scandalized. Excuse me. He's right, he said again, setting his drink down. We've spent too long worrying about what the neighbors think. Maybe it's time we start worrying about what's true. The man had never agreed with me once in 3 years of marriage. I nearly fainted from shock. Diana looked between him, me, and Chloe, realizing the tide had turned. Her empire of curated perfection was cracking. She inhaled sharply, plastered on her pageant-ready smile, and said, well, isn't this a productive conversation? Desert anyone? Classic Hollis deflection maneuver. Sophie exhaled slowly, looking at me with a mix of relief and disbelief. I gave her a small grin. See, no fireworks, just a few truth bombs. She mouthed, you're impossible. Dessert arrived. Some fancy tiramisu that tasted like tension and passive aggression. But for the first time, I wasn't the one shrinking in my seat. Chloe laughed freely. Frank asked me about my business like he genuinely cared. Even the charity friends softened. When the night finally ended, Diana escorted us to the door, still smiling, but quieter now. Aaron, she said, despite everything, I do appreciate your candor. Thanks. As I said, it's hereditary for my conscience. She didn't respond, just nodded stiffly and closed the door behind us. In the car, Sophie turned to me. You realize you just shifted the entire family dynamic, right? Yeah, I said. Feels weirdly powerful. Like when you finally update your phone and everything runs faster. She laughed. You're unbelievable. Unbelievable or undefeated? She rolled her eyes but smiled. Both. Back home, I poured 2 glasses of wine. Sophie joined me on the balcony, city lights flickering in the distance. You know, she said, I think my mom actually heard you tonight. Like really heard you. I'll believe it when she sends a Christmas card without passive-aggressive scripture. She laughed again, softer this time. Still, thank you for standing up for yourself and honestly for all of us. I raised my glass to truth bombs and slightly overcooked chicken. She clinkied hers against mine to surviving the Hollises. We drank and for once the night felt peaceful. No pretenses, no silent resentments or just 2 people who'd finally stopped playing parts in someone else's performance. Later, as we got ready for bed, my phone buzzed with one more text from Chloe. Thanks again for everything. I'm starting a new job Monday. Real company, real paycheck, Real life. Maybe honesty is not so bad after all. I smiled, set the phone down, and said to no one in particular, "Look at that. A Hollis running on authenticity. Didn't see the plot twist coming." Sophie called from the bathroom, "What's that?" "Nothing," I said. "Just progress." And as I turned off the light, I realized something wild. For the first time since joining the family of perfects, I wasn't the outsider anymore. I was the reset button, the truth teller, the necessary chaos that forced a little humanity into the perfect facade. Not bad for a guy they once called the unemployed tech husband. You know that eerie quiet after a tornado tears through a town. The birds don't sing, the wind stops moving, and everyone just stands around pretending their roof isn't in another zip code. That's what the Hollis family felt like after the dinner of reckoning. The storm had passed, but man, the wreckage was spectacular. On Monday morning, Sophie's phone started dinging like a casino machine. Group chat, voicemails, the whole circus. And Blessed had gone from curated brunch pics to a digital war zone. Chloe had apparently quit her influencer consulting gig. Diana was threatening to rebrand the family. And Frank, legend that he is, changed the group name to Repressed. I nearly spit out my coffee when I saw that. "Your dad's my hero," I told Sophie. She groaned. "He's making it worse. He's making it honest." Big difference. The real kicker, people were still talking online. Somehow, that one dinner photo had turned me into a folk hero for introverts and corporate survivors everywhere. Reddit threads titled "The Tech Guy Who Snapped" had popped up. Memes of me raising my glass with captions like, "When your in-laws mistake silence for weakness" were everywhere. Even my coworkers got in on it. My project manager sent me a gif of a mic drop with the subject line, "You in-laws okay?" I responded, "They're adjusting to reality slowly," but inside I wasn't gloating. Not entirely. There was something weird about becoming the face of petty justice. For all the laughs, I couldn't shake the tension at home. Sophie was quiet most nights, more reflective, less snappy. We'd both been through a war neither of us fully signed up for. So, I did what any responsible husband would do. I made tacos. Nothing repairs emotional carnage like homemade tacos. Sophie came home from work that night and stopped in her tracks. "Is that cilantro?" "It is," I said. I said. An emotional stability sautéed to perfection. She smiled, small but real, trying to bribe me with food. Not bribe, distract. She sat down, exhaling. I could use that. "Mom called again today." "Ah," I said, "my biggest fan. She says she's hosting a brunch for her charity board this weekend and doesn't want you there." "Perfect," I said. "You think she'll send a written invitation saying that?" "I'd frame it." Sophie rolled her eyes. "Aaron, she's still processing everything." "She's not processing. She's plotting." "She's embarrassed," Sophie said softly. "And when my mom's embarrassed, she turns into, well, my mom." "I'm not apologizing," I said. "Just in case that's where this is going. I didn't ask you to," she played with her fork. "Honestly, part of me is glad you said what you did. I just wish it hadn't blown up so public." "Yeah," I said. "Next time I'll schedule the truth for after dessert," she chuckled. "You're impossible." Consistently. Then her phone buzzed again. "Chloe, of course." Sophie glanced at the message and her face softened. "She got the job." "Really?" "Yep. Junior marketing coordinator, real company, real salary." She said she's scared but excited. "Well, I said, look at that. The Hollis golden child's finally in the workforce. Should we alert the Smithsonian?" Sophie laughed for real this time, shaking her head. "She also said to tell you thank you again." "Aw," I said, "tell her she's welcome and to avoid any guy who uses the words synergy or crypto in the same sentence." Over the next week, things slowly started shifting. The Hollises, in their own chaotic way, were evolving. Frank and I started texting more. The man turned out to be hilarious once he wasn't filtering everything through Diana's social performance script. He'd send me golf memes at 2 a.m. and little nuggets of wisdom like, "Remember, son, life's like a sand trap. Sometimes you've got to hit hard and hope you don't clip a spectator." The guy had range. Meanwhile, Chloe began posting less about manifesting abundance and more about learning accountability. Her followers were confused, but I was impressed. Progress is progress, even if it starts in an Instagram caption. Then came Thursday, the day of the family summit. Sophie got the text first. "Diana, dinner, Friday, immediate family only. No drama." I snorted. "That's like inviting lightning and saying, 'Please don't thunder.'" Sophie just said, "Please behave." "I'll try," I said. "But if she brings up reputation, I can't make promises." Friday came and so did the tension. The Hollis mansion looked quieter than usual. The candles were dimmer, the music softer. Diana had even traded her pearls for a simple necklace. Maybe she was trying to seem approachable. Frank greeted us with a grin. The gladiator returns. Just here for dinner, not conquest, I said. Diana emerged from the kitchen. Aaron, Sophie, thank you for coming. Her tone was different, less frost, more diplomacy, like someone who'd just spent a week in PR rehab. We all sat down. The table was small this time, just the four of us. No audience, no backup singers. Diana poured wine and said, "Before we eat, I'd like to address everything." Frank mouthed, "Here we go." She inhaled deeply. "Aaron, I owe you an apology." I blinked. "I'm sorry." "What?" She nodded. "I let my pride get in the way. You were right about Brandon. You were right to expose him. I just didn't like the way it made us look." "That's an understatement," I said carefully. She actually smiled. "Yes, but I've had time to reflect. Maybe the problem isn't how things looked. Maybe it's that we care too much about looking perfect." Frank raised his glass. "Hallelujah." Sophie's eyes widened. "Mom, did you just agree with Aaron?" "I did," Diana said. "Don't make me repeat it. If I hadn't been sitting, I'd have fallen over." She continued. "I spoke with my charity board. I told them I was taking a step back. I need to focus on my family, not just how my family appears." That one stunned the room. Even Frank stopped chewing. "Wow," I said. "That's unexpected." Diana shrugged. "Turns out humility is cheaper than therapy." We all laughed. Genuine laughter. It felt strange, but good. Then she looked at me. "And for what it's worth, Aaron, I'm proud of what you've built. You've done well for yourself." I stared at her, half expecting Ashton Kutcher to pop out and yell punked. "Did Frank put something in your wine?" "Don't push it," she said, but she was smiling. Dinner that night was, dare I say, pleasant. No digs, no backhanded compliments, no silent wars disguised as table etiquette. Just people eating and occasionally laughing without calculating optics. After dessert, Frank pulled me aside on the patio. "You know, son," he said, lighting his cigar. "You did what I never could." "What's that?" "Made her admit she's wrong." I grinned. "Careful. She might hear you." He chuckled. Worth the risk." We clinkied glasses. For once, it felt like peace. Real messy human peace. When Sophie and I got home, she kicked off her heels and flopped onto the couch. "I don't believe it," she said. "My mom actually apologized. I think you broke her programming." "Don't give me too much credit," I said. "She's still version 1.5, the beta version of humble." Sophie laughed so hard she snorted. "You're unbelievable." "Unbelievably effective," I corrected. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then she said softly, "You know, I used to think keeping the peace meant keeping quiet, but maybe it just means telling the truth without apology." I smiled. "Sounds like someone's been hanging out with me too long." "Maybe," she said. "And maybe that's not a bad thing." The next morning, I woke up to a text from Diana. "Good morning, Aaron. Family brunch Sunday. No expectations, just pancakes." Pancakes? The universal symbol of surrender. Sophie peeked over my shoulder, reading it. "You going?" "Hell yes," I said. "Free food and emotional closure. Count me in." And that's when I realized this was the real fallout. Not chaos, not drama, but growth. It didn't explode. It unfolded slowly, clumsily. Honestly, I wasn't the villain anymore or the quiet one or the unemployed tech guy. I was just Aaron, the man who said what everyone was thinking and survived the dinner table apocalypse. Not bad for a guy who used to dread family gatherings. Sunday brunch at Diana's was shockingly normal. No veiled insults, no family values speeches, not even a single reference to reputation. Just pancakes, sunlight, and the faint sound of everyone pretending not to walk on emotional eggshells. Diana even smiled when I walked in. A real one, not the kind that looked like it came with a receipt. "Aaron," she said, "thank you for coming. My therapist said I should face my fears." I replied, sitting down. Frank laughed so loud he nearly spilled his mimosa. Chloe rolled her eyes but winked. Sophie looked at me across the table and mouthed, "Behave." And for once, I did, 'cause I didn't need to prove anything anymore. I'd already said what needed to be said, survived the fallout and watched an entire family recalibrate around honesty. Turns out the truth doesn't just set you free. It makes breakfast taste better. After brunch, as Sophie and I walked to the car, she slipped her hand into mine. "You realize you changed everything, right? She said, maybe, I said. Or maybe I just stopped pretending. She smiled. Same thing. The sun hit just right. The air felt lighter. And for the first time since marrying into the family of perfects, I wasn't carrying their weight anymore. No more performances. No more quiet compliance. Just freedom. Simple, unapologetic, earned. I opened the car door for her and grinned. You know, I might actually start looking forward to family dinners. She laughed. Don't push it. I shrugged. Worth a try. And with that, we drove off, free, flawed, and finally real.